Good morning and welcome to this week's recruitment discussion with Jump. And this week we have a special guest, Ryan Collett from Recutation. So before I introduce Ryan, or get him to really to introduce himself, really, so let's have a little bit more sort of information about Recutation. It came about so recruitment agents can grow and go trust with their clients and their candidates. And it's all about that engagement with their consultants and their clients and their candidates. Their philosophy is people connect with people, and you and your consultant's brand make up the company brand. So how do you grow and how do you develop that? And there's no better way that we think, and we've talked about this an awful lot on this channel, about social proofing and then sharing that with your customers and your customer stories. So Reputation is a platform that's built by recruiters for recruiters, and Ryan believes that his bespoke platform provides a simple and effective way to collect, maintain, and drive success stories through collecting really good feedback, referrals, references, etc., from your clients. So, Ryan, welcome. Thank you for your time today. We love the dirty leads behind it.
Yeah.
We're all going to salute the dirty leads. I know Dave, as an Arsenal fan, will be cringing there, but we'll let him cringe away.
No, I could be a Leeds fan.
We all
Yeah.
remember. We all
For
remember
like 45
71.
minutes.
We all remember 71. But there you go. So, Ryan, please introduce yourself before we sort of kick off onto the questions.
Yeah, cool. Number one, thanks for having me, Howard. So yeah, as you probably guessed, I'm born, bred, and live in Leeds, big Leeds fan. So yeah, I've been in the recruitment industry over 15 years now. Started at S3, where I'm still there now, as an associate recruitment consultant, and then I've worked my way up to a director level. But around about kind of probably about 5 years ago, I had my friend round in my kitchen who worked in insurance for quite a large insurance firm, and he wanted to change, wanted a new role, wanted to change. He asked me, "Oh, can you help me out?" Now, I've never recruited in insurance, so I said, "Oh, I'll tell you what, I'll find you somebody who's good. Just find a good recruiter." And he was like, "How do I do that?" And I was like, "Oh, you'll find one on LinkedIn." So I actually went on LinkedIn for him. I said, I'll put some time in. I'll scroll through loads of insurance recruiters, and then I sent him a list of 10. Said, "These look all right, mate. Try them." Um, After about a week, he came back to me and he was like, "Mate, some of them didn't have a clue." And he was like, "One good recruiter out of 10." And I was like, "There must be a better way to find good recruiters. Whether you're a candidate looking for work, whether you're a client." Um, how do you do it? And that's where I came up with the idea to build a review platform just for recruitment. Because obviously there's other platforms out there, that Trustpilot, Google reviews, which people use. A lot of people use LinkedIn recommendations, but none of them seem to be made for the recruitment industry. They were just very generic kind of service level platforms. So yeah, it all came trying to help one of my friends, and then the idea just spiraled, and then yeah, managed to get a co-founder on board who's technical and built the platform from the ground up and made it really bespoke. So yeah, we're really excited about the functionality. It's about keeping it simple, like you said there, easy to collect reviews, easy to monitor your performance, and we've got a really cool tool that makes it really easy to market things out onto socials as well.
Brilliant. So let's kick off and let's have, as we discussed before, sort of more of a generic sort of view of what's going on and how it can work. And then if we can link that back to your platform, then we'll try and link that in. But obviously,
Yeah.
this isn't a sales platform for the people. This is about learning and how that we can develop from there. So you mentioned in one of your previous conversations that prospects are 3 to 5 times more likely to engage with social proof. However, most recruitment leaders I work with struggle to build that sort of systematic process of getting social proof. So, what's the single biggest mistake you see recruitment businesses make when trying to implement a testimonial generating system? And how can leaders ensure their teams actually follow through consistently?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, it's kind of living that mindset of how important customer experience is. We're in a sales environment, and sometimes, it's all about putting numbers on the board, but what is the experience that we're actually giving our customers? So unless you kind of live that and breed that culture internally, then the system will fall apart because people don't buy into it. Um, so for me, I would say the biggest mistake is once you've got that culture ingrained, it's not having a process to automate it. It can sometimes be seen as an afterthought as opposed to being really proactive with it. And I think for me, if you have that way of collecting reviews within your business, systemize everybody's approach, agree like key trigger points, so everybody knows when it should happen. So are you going to collect them from placements, interviews, etc.? That can really help in terms of just installing that within the consultants, so they get those consistent flow coming through.
That's an interesting point, and a point that I get asked quite a lot. That you're talking about, it's not just about the placement where you're trying to collect information from, it's about anybody who's gone through the recruitment process. So is that what you're saying, that you tend to sort of look at the whole recruitment process rather than the end part, which is the bit that most people really want to get information from?
Yeah, I think, if you look at my experience of when we've typically, if we've had a system in place for this, and it's normally when somebody's been placed, of course, like, yes, it makes sense, try and get a testimonial, but we actually started collecting reviews from everyone that interviewed for us, because not everybody can get the job, but we need to make sure that every candidate had a really good experience, whether they got the job or not. And even now, I try and encourage people, even if you've been out and met somebody, you've tried to get them a good, an opportunity. You can't place everybody, but the people where you don't place, if they still give you good feedback, if anything, that makes that social proof even stronger. So it's not just looking at the ones where you have the wins. What about the ones that didn't get the roles? And trying to build that into your process as well, because that tells a much more of a rounded story, I would say, in the marketplace.
So let's push that then. So when you talk about dual level testimonials from both the firm, the business, the recruitment agency, and the consultant, the individual that's dealing with it, how do you recommend structuring this in a business where you have a mixture of high performers, developing consultants, poor performers? Should leaders focus on building the company's credibility first, or is there a way to accelerate individual consultants' confidence through early testimonial wins?
Yes, I think it can very much differ company by company, and obviously depends on size. If you're a solopreneur and it's just you are the company within that. But so your personal brand becomes your agency brand anyway. But where you've got multiple consultants, I think what tends to happen is people either go down the company route and we're going to push everything through a company platform, or we go down the personal route and you go down, the LinkedIn, the personal recommendations piece. I think if you've got high performers, your senior people, they've probably got lots of experience, lots of stories. The question will be, would you capture it? If you've got a team full of junior people, then it can take a bit of time for them to get to the point of placement. So if you're only collecting at placement stage, they might not get that gratification, but might be doing some really good work with a select pool of candidates and clients in between, that if they can go into market, collect testimonial, even for somebody that haven't placed, but they offer great service, it'd be a real confidence booster from them early doors before they get to that result of a placement. So for me, you can collect them with the seniors. I think we have a big opportunity. I've worked with some amazing people over the years and billers. But if that's all just sat with them, then the company's not benefiting from that either. So it's trying to find a balance between building personal brands and company brands, but people always buy people, and they're obviously a showcase and they're role modeling your agency. So it's important that you empower them, but also have a way that it links back into the company brand as well.
So let's try push that, because on the in the audience, there's solo businesses, there's some large businesses, there's mixtures. So what would you promote then? Would you promote collecting company or consultant branding, and which one do you find gets the biggest impact?
I would always go on personal, on people, like empowering them to build their own stories, their own testimonials. But then having a way that they do collate to the brand. So when somebody's first starting out, instead of saying I, it can be we. So we've done this. This is our case study. They can leverage off the back of the other great experience that's gone on there. So, but ultimately, if you've got multiple people within the agency, it's the consultants making the call, consultants doing the meetings, and that's where ultimately people buy from people. And I think that's where the real power is. but having a way that it funnels back into the agency as well is also super important. And I think that's trying to find a balance is really, really key within that.
Okay, so let's push that a little bit further then. Okay, you started to talk about different parts of the recruitment process when we should be collating information from that we could use from there. So if you're looking at optimal time for capturing testimonials from clients and candidates, can you walk us through what that looks like in practice? And more importantly, how do you train your consultants to overcome the awkwardness or the reluctance that they feel when asking clients and especially candidates for testimonials at critical times, especially those that you maybe not have succeeded with?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think if you go out and speak to consultants in terms of, why do you not gain testimonials? A lot of it is down to that awkwardness. Some people just find it strange or weird just to ask somebody, or could you say nice things about them, etc. So I think how you frame that's very, very key. I suppose getting the timing right. If we go back to the timing piece first, I think there's a mix because I've talked about kind of automating things. Now, if you just set certain rules up of when you're going to collect things, so I don't know, somebody gets an offer, can you leave me a review, once they've accepted the offer? That might not be the end of the sales cycle, really. So my experience predominantly is in contract. So if you just collect a review at the end of when they've got the offer and you place them, they're probably not seeing the kind of post-placement service that you're then going to offer and how you care about them, ensure the timesheets are being approved and paid, etc. So for me, I wouldn't say there's like a optimal time for everybody. You've got to find a sweet spot depending on the market that you work, the type of recruitment that you do, and also what fits into your sales cycle. And the way I probably explain it is like not when the job's done, but like at the natural end of when you feel you've offered a meaningful service is the best time to ask when somebody's got a full picture within that. So like for me, if I place somebody, that would be within probably 2 to 4 weeks after we place them to make sure they've settled in, got everything that they need. You've been on site and done a review or had that catch-up meeting and given them feedback both ways. That's for when people have been placed and when you've had that positive. Where people haven't, I think it's important to capture it a little bit sooner and as quick as possible. So if I had 3 interviews, placed 1 candidate, the 2 that didn't get the role, I would make sure number 1 that I feedback to them, all right, because that's like one of the biggest bugbears. And then I would then just 100% just ask them saying, listen, appreciate I didn't place you. I'm still going to work really hard to generate other interest, but I'd be really keen to understand what you thought about of the service, regardless whether I placed you or not. Would you be open to leave me some feedback? And I think that's what I would do. And it's not about saying, can you say great things? It's just having that, could you give me some feedback on my service? And the easy way, just, there's 2 ways. You can just ask them for it there on the call, or you can just say, I'd love to get your feedback. And then you follow up with an email saying, listen, as mentioned, I'd love to understand what you thought of my service, any areas for improvement. If you could leave me a review, that'd be great. I think doing things over email soften it a little bit and remove that awkwardness from there. Or you bring it into the agency, you put it on your managers. So like service review. So, say I had a team and a consultant who felt awkward asking, I could ring a candidate who we had interviewed, we didn't get the job, and I'd simply ring saying, hi, I know you interviewed, it didn't work out. How did you find the service? Okay, would you mind putting that in a review for the consultant? They'd really appreciate that. As per anything, we're always looking to improve, capture what we're good at, and use that to showcase elsewhere. And they'll understand about reputation. And I think in the modern world, everybody reviews most things nowadays. If they were buying a holiday, buying a car, buying anything off Amazon, it's the first thing you see is the reviews on the profile. So I don't think there's any need now to have that awkwardness. And I think, it's language as well. So review versus testimonial, it leaves it open. I think that's sometimes, like a LinkedIn recommendation, it almost says that you have to recommend, whereas just that feedback and that review gives you a bit more of a balanced approach within that. So it's not about, can I think about self-promotion? I think it's more
Yeah.
about that honest feedback and reviews that you want to be asking about.
And I think that's that thing, Ryan, you said the feedback can be good and it can be less than good. And
Yeah,
it's important to have both.
100%. Yeah. And I think if you do get, if you do get a bad review, right, it's a real opportunity. Number one, to learn, and number two, to kind of deal with it. And I think, I look back at my career, and sometimes my best customers have come from people that I maybe had bad feedback from, or had a bad experience with us as an agency at one point. And just by saying, okay, cool, I really want to understand what that was. Okay,
Yeah.
can I come? What can we do to change it? And almost like if you can turn somebody's perception around, it's even stronger because they've got that kind of, it wasn't great, but now good. Actually, they've listened. And I think that's the thing that all customers want, right? They want people to listen and impact the feedback that they give.
So someone's just dropped me a text from some of the people on the webinars dropped me a text. And the question is, they've tried to implement this type of thing over and over again through several companies, apparently, and they've never really managed to get it off. So their question is, how does your system differentiate that to ensure it becomes part of a process, part of a practice, etc.? And their question is, can you answer that without selling your service?
Okay, I talked about automation. For me, I think I speak to a lot of people within kind of the rec tech space. And one of kind of like the non-negotiables is that CRM integration. So, getting things pushed to you that are those type of reminders. So that's something that we can do through Zapier, is like integrate within there. So every week, how it should work is that you would get an email saying, these are the people that I recommend you getting feedback from, and you can log in and send that whenever you want. So I think without, can I say too much? But then the other thing that I'd probably say is, I talked about that kind of living it, and that probably the third part, if you talk about the way I kind of see of like having a system in place. Number one, you got to live good customer experience. Second thing, you've got to try and automate as much as possible, so people don't forget and have those trigger points. Then the other one is probably promotion for me, is what you do internally within your agency to ensure that it's not forgotten about. So it can be as simple as every week in a stand-up or your team meeting, if people are collecting reviews, it's visible. And you go through it and you show and you say, well done, and reinforce that positive behavior. For me, that's really, really key, because that breeds through an agency. And if you've got something to, testimonials on LinkedIn, etc., I've seen that with my teams, that I've got somebody share one, and then the next day somebody else shares, oh, I need to get a testimonial from him or a review from them, and then they're sharing it. So we've tried to make that process really easy, so you don't have to worry about, taking it off one place, putting it in Canva, putting in a template, then doing all this stuff. We've got a tool which just basically automates it, and you get a ready to post social image tool within there. And then just kind of breeds, like I said, that's just about visibility breeding. But as an owner and as an agency owner, you've got to champion it, and you've got to lean into it, whether that's through service reviews, whether that's through running a little competition, from a quality and a quantity. So who can get the most reviews? But then what about review of the month? What's exceptional service? And it's about trying to ingrain it, not just seeing it as like an add-on, or that's just another thing that we need to do. It's kind of putting it at the heart of the business, I would say.
So that's really interesting. So it doesn't matter then whether you're a solo business or 100+ recruitment agency, because what you're doing is I suppose, social proofing your own processes by then going out and asking everybody that's almost gone through that process to review your process, so you can then build, develop, and change. And I always think that sometimes that a lot of recruitment agencies are very blinkered about their process. Their process is really, really good. And all of a sudden, when you start to get bad press from candidates or clients, they tend not to believe it. But if that's constantly coming through, then sure, they should be thinking, I've got to change my process and do something about my process. And what you're saying is that because you automate all of this, and therefore it's not left to the consultant's choice, what you are doing is providing that capability to improve the business strength and process to improve client and candidate interaction?
Yeah, so within the system that we have, it's very flexible. Okay, so you can use it so that no matter what trigger you suggest, whether it's somebody who's had a CV sent to a job or it's somebody who's had an interview, they automatically get a review at a specific time. Now, I would say one of the challenges with that is that going out at the right time for the candidate? We talked about optimum timing. Is it the right time for you as an agency because your service might not have finished? Is it the right time for the candidate to then do the review? As daft as it seems, if you send me a review at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, can you review me? I'm probably not going to do it because I'm too busy setting up my week. Whereas if you send me on a Friday you could do. So we put it all in like a draft, as we call it, in drafts, and all the information's there. And then you decide when the right timing is for that candidate or client to get the review. But it's all automated and triggered into there, so they don't have to go create the review or anything. And then it's just a case of selecting when you send it from there. So I think the big thing for me is like that personal pride piece, and that's where you like personal brand, company brand. Like our platform gives each consultant their own review profile. So you can have 10 people, but each individual gets their own review profile, like you would have their own Trustpilot profile. Now, that's yours, and that's something you can be proud of and you can showcase. And that's what I'm talking about, that pollination across other people. That if I'm sat here and I've got 20 reviews and I'm working with somebody who's got none, and they see me keep getting good customer feedback, it's just going to inspire them to kind of, oh, maybe I should do that. Maybe I could use that as my way to prove how good my service is. Because sometimes I always say, sometimes the best billers aren't the best marketers of themselves, you know. And we just try and make that really easy.
And I tell you what's becoming very true in markets where the talent is scarce. Often the candidate is looking for the right agent.
Yeah.
And by agent, I mean the individual who works for the company. They care less about the company often, and they just want to be represented well. To your story at the beginning, Ryan. And I think if you've got a candidate, if you've got someone with 20 reviews versus someone with none, it's easy to make a decision.
Yeah, 100%. I think, there's lots of stats that get bandied around in there. And I think one of them is that most people only trust people when they can see 10 reviews. That's when they'll start to trust a person or a business. But if you compound that, Dave, and imagine if I'm an agency owner and I've got 10 people and all of them have got great feedback, that then says something really special about the agency as well.
Yeah.
And I'm with you on that yes, there can be good and bad consultants all over the place, just like anybody deal with any business. But if it's actually part of the culture and it's part of a focus and at the heart of the business, and proofs in the pudding that every single person has got 25, 30 reviews, then it really does give you some weight as you kind of growing and scaling your business within that. And it's one of those that, if you think about the company and the agency brand, like, we've got to be honest, there's a high turnover in recruitment. All right.
Yeah.
And sometimes, whether people leave for good reasons or bad reasons, etc. Sometimes you got to capture that IP when somebody is actually really, really good. Do you know what I mean? Because if it's all on LinkedIn, for example, that just goes with them, and there's no attribute to the company. Whereas our platform would keep that, so it does get assigned to the company, even if they do leave your agency as well. Obviously, they'll be removed from the consultant section because they've moved on, but you get to keep that value that they brought to you as an agency as well. So yeah.
So one of the things that we look for, I mean, Dave will go for this. When we start to put a process in and we start to put things in, what we're looking for is that really unsolicited testimonial through service excellence. That's really the holy grail that we're looking for. So for recruitment leaders looking at their current service offering, what frameworks for identifying and eliminating those friction points do you have? So let's say, what are the 2, 3 most common friction points you see across the industry that, once fixed, constantly generate unsolicited testimonials?
Yeah. It's got them, as daft as this seems, it always comes down to the basics, in my opinion. All right. And communication is possibly number one. We did some quite big research on this, and the biggest frustration in the industry came from when a candidate interviewed and didn't get feedback. So that for me is a great starting point, and that's why I'd always recommend not just looking at the placement ones, because the people who don't get the job are so valuable, because they'll either then go out and say good things or bad things depending on that experience that they've had with you. But the best way to think about it, like if you want to get positive unsolicited ones, Howard, like you mentioned there, is it's just simply like reverse engineer it, and just think what would cause somebody to leave a negative review, and are we doing the absolute opposite of that? So giving feedback, really, really key. Make sure we're not silencing and ghosting, that terminology that you hear, or just giving little updates that sometimes you might not have any news, but just keeping them informed that I haven't had feedback from the client just yet. I am chasing. I'll come back to you as soon as possible. If you can be the one that goes out there and tells them that without them having to chase, then that's going to stand you in good stead, because most people are chasing for feedback from agencies, etc. But it's just having that process in place within that. And then I'm a big Daniel Priestley fan, and I think it's in his book Oversubscribed that he wrote. He talks about kind of what's your 30% of magic. So your 70% is your service levels that you offer that will be very similar across recruitment agencies. But what's that 30%? Which is your bit of magic, and it uses the phrase of being positively remarkable. So what can you do that just adds that little bit of sprinkle on top of it? It could be a little good luck card, before the start. It could be just making sure that you drop a little text to them, before their interview, wishing them good luck in the morning. It could be a thank you to your client on something expected. It could be if they achieve a milestone within the business and you're aware of it, that you say congratulations, or whatever it could be. Just those things that probably aren't very common. What's a little bit different within that somebody might go, oh, that's a lovely little touch. I'm going to go promote that. I saw somebody who had just sent it was just a cup by a mug branded with a card, just saying congratulations, welcome to the whatever agency family. Okay. And they just put it on LinkedIn. What amazing promotion. They never asked to be put on LinkedIn. It just came from that. So it's for me, it's looking at those little things, and everybody's different, and every agency is different. But yeah, that's what I'd probably suggest within that. Reverse engineer it, making sure you cut out all the negative, and then how can you make that really positive, and then what's that little bit of magic that you can sprinkle in that'll lead somebody to go promote you without asking.
Yeah. So you mentioned using testimonials as a sort of team development asset to build certainly consultants' confidence, especially some of those that aren't confident about what they're doing. How do you measure or track the impact that it has on individual performance? And for leaders scaling their business, at what point should testimonials become a KPI or part of the consultant's review performance?
Yeah. For me, this should be a layer of every single promotion or part of their development journey. And I think you can do that from day one when people start. If in the modern world, and I'm sure I'll comment around AI, but if people are building a personal brand, testimonials are a great way to add into that. And that's stuff you can do throughout their career. Listen, I would you can set goals, all right? So you could set KPIs. I'd probably not have it as like a KPI, but just maybe something that, listen, if you are going to make your next step in your journey, we'd want to make sure we've got positive feedback from your clients. So whether that's because you're doing service calls and getting that feedback, or you're putting a review system in place, I think that would be really key. And we all know when you first start, it's really, really tough. And we all kind of think that placement's like the holy grail, but if you can just get somebody who's starting out to get 3 or 4 bits of positive feedback from people they've worked with, regardless if they place them, their confidence levels and their buzz is going to be amazing. I had one last week where it's been about 5 or 6 weeks, and he'd been and met the candidate. put a good plan in
Wow.
place, and then the candidate just gave him a shout out on LinkedIn. I was sat next to him, and the buzz on the guy's face was brilliant.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that makes him, even though he's not done a placement, he goes, I'm good at this job. People do value what I do. And I think sometimes coming into industry, we can sometimes question our own value and our own difference in the market. So by having this as a focus, I think it can really, really breed that confidence levels within junior people who've just joined.
I think people often talk about that, don't they? And I think it's not what you say to people; it's how you make them feel, and it's how you make them feel. That lasts for an awful long time. And I'm sure there's lots of people on this webinar now, and people who are listening to this webinar when they watch it on LinkedIn and our website, who will talk about how many people came to them from their recruitment process where they hadn't got a job but they treated them really well, came to them later on further down the line when they become managers or things like that, and said, I remember that. And I think it's all about how you make people feel. And I think, again, if then the candidate comes back or the client comes back and gives an unsolicited shout out like that, how does that make the consultant feel about what's going on? And I think that's the bit that really changes things when you start to look at developing a really high end platform such as this that drives testimonials.
Yeah.
And also because so many people don't, or so many managers aren't encouraging consultants to get testimonials from candidates or clients. The ones that do automatically have a leverage. If they do it well and consistently, it really becomes very, very powerful. And it becomes a market differentiator more than, say, spending hundreds of £1,000s on ads or something like that. But I'm not sure everybody quite gets that, right? I don't know whether you found that since you launched.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some people are just scared to start, I think. And let's be really honest, right? It's a compounding interest for me. That's what I see it as. It's just like putting money into stocks and shares, ISA, right? You put £1 in today, it's probably not worth much. You get one review today, it's probably not worth much. But imagine if you did that for a full year and every week you got a bit of feedback from a customer, okay, that was positive about you. By the end of the year, you'd have 52 positive bits of feedback that you can then use and showcase out there in the market. You can use that in outreach, your business development, bottom of your auto sig saying, check out what people have said about me. And that's without even if I kind of say sprinkling the absolute magic sauce is where you're getting a recommendation or you've got a review from somebody who's known to that other person. That's where it's super, super powerful.
Yeah.
Now, that's not always possible because not everybody's going to be connected. So I think for me, even if they're not connected, if they can see a review from somebody who has the same job title, works in the same industry, has had the same problem or challenge, and you've shown you can solve that for somebody similar to them, they're more likely to go, okay, yeah, he's aligned, he's in the world. I'm going to give them a chance versus somebody who hasn't got anything. It's all that we used to have a say like, sell, don't tell. Don't tell somebody you're a specialist. You've got to sell it to them. You've got to show them that you're a specialist. And I love that word show. Show. How are you showcasing somebody that you are a specialist? You are a good recruiter. Because sometimes we just rely off sales ability. But as I'm sure we'll talk about, AI is going to change the game because everyone can do a lot of outreach, etc. But it's making sure if somebody goes and researches you, what are they going to think about you? And I think a great exercise, I would say, is, again, it comes from Daniel Priest, is just go Google yourself. Google tells a story of who you are. And if you Googled somebody today, you'd probably get a LinkedIn profile. But imagine if you had, lots of other positive news stories within that Google kind of search that you did.
Let's move that on then a bit then. Looking at 2026 specifically, how do you see AI and the change in buyers' behaviors, and that's both candidates and clients, how do you see that affecting the testimonial landscape? And should recruitment leaders be adapting their approach to testimonials differently than they did, say, 12, 18 months ago?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like when I had this idea 5 years ago, AI was just not even a thing. And now I just kind of think that this is going to have to be, there's got to be some differentiator because everyone's going to have access to the same candidates, the same systems, tools. Everyone's getting more effective with things. The real differentiator is going to be the people. That human element's not going to go, and the best way to do that is through what other people say about you. So for me, it'd just be doubling down on it. Within that, I think even before AI, there was a trust issue in the industry, and there probably still is. We get dragged down by the cowboys, as we used to call them in recruitment.
Yeah.
And we're like, car salesmen, estate agents, recruiters, we just get put in that bucket. And I always think if you can just do anything to change the perception of somebody and not put you in that bucket of people, then you'll do really well. And one way to do that is by showing that other people vouch for you within that. And, let's be honest, people are going to be getting more things. There's going to be more, I call it noise. There's going to be so much noise nowadays with the use of AI tools. And everyone can get slicker at things because it's just that process is becoming a bit more commoditized. This for me is where it's going to be a little bit different. And I think because of that, like I'm the same. If I receive an email from a new product nowadays, or somebody, you're like, is this real? Is it not? And the amount of scams that go on, within this, you're like, is this a real person that's emailed me? Is this actually true? A good way to look at that is, oh, hang on, this has been sent. If I was, I don't know, an insurance company, and I can go on Trustpilot and they're up there, I go, oh, it is number one. At least it's a real company. Never mind, are they any good? And then it's cool. Are they actually any good? Yeah, listen, they've got a great reputation within there. So, I think it's something we all need to start looking at. And the best thing is, you probably sat on a gold mine. This is what I always feel that, I think I wrote a few posts about, if I was going to do one thing in the first week of January, it'd go back and look at the previous year and make sure, have I captured every great success story that I had, within that year that I can then package up. Again, great thing, you could use AI to market and package it up that I can then use to go try and win more business within my either existing customer base or a new customer base within that.
I think you're right there that I think AI has so much to offer, but I think AI also has so much to almost take over that angst of I never got a response. Well, now I've got an automated response.
Yeah.
But it's just an automated, it's not a personalized response. It's not a proper response. And I think AI will just take away that pain, but it will still be the pain for the candidate and client because they haven't had any proper personal response or personal touch and things like that. So I do think AI will bring some good things to us, but I also think it will also mask some of our behaviors, and that will still be inbred into the candidate and client that it's something that they just don't like, and we're just going to move from one point to another point unless we do something properly different about it.
Yeah.
I think for our last question then, for recruitment leaders who are already stretched thin and worried about adding one more thing to their plate, to their processes, if you could only implement one element of your testimonial system in the next 90 days that would deliver a faster ROI, what would you tell people on this webinar to focus on first?
I think it just automate it, process, get a process in place to do this, to collect feedback. That'd be my number one thing. If you think you're not quite there, like simple things just to kind of inspire people, just do like a session with your team or within there, just define what does good customer experience look like, and just have that kind of documented somewhere. Number one, if you haven't kind of got that or etc., just run a bit of a workshop on it with your people, get them inspired about this, and use maybe some of the stuff we talked about AI, that how we need to double down on this. But then once you've got that right, how are we going to make sure we collect those things and automate where you can? So get things, just make life really easy. It's like, if you want to build a good habit, the number one rule to start with is make it easy. So just make it easy for people to do this. That's what I'll probably say. That automation piece for me would be key.
it's a really interesting sort of conversation all the way through this. There's sort of so much thing that's sort of popping up into my head about what consultants can be doing, what clients can be doing, and that word automation is something I think a lot of recruitment agencies fear to a certain degree, or fail to do because they don't follow it through and they don't keep improving that automation. And that goes back to that conversation about, AI automation and how it changes not only your consultants' behavior, but your candidates' behavior and your clients' behavior, and how they feel part of the process. And I think that, to me, if I was looking at this thing, it's how I'd make my candidates and my clients feel part of the process rather than just involved in the process. And I think there's a very big difference between being involved in a process and being part of a process, irrespective of whether you get to the end and get to the, across the finish line, or whether you're ejected halfway through that process. It's feeling part of something. And I go back to that comment. It's about, if that process makes you feel really good, then you'll go back and get involved in that process.
Yeah.
So, as I say, I think there's so much to be had on this conversation. There's so much things that lots of recruitment agencies can be doing to improve their testimonials, their capability and capacity of growing things. So I believe that you've got an offer that you want to put out to people on this webinar today. So Ryan, I'll leave it open to you.
Yeah, I mean, the platform, as it currently stands, we have a free version. But for anybody on this webinar, or within kind of Jump Advisor groups, might be people that are watching it afterwards, there's a code that we can send out, which is Jump 50, and that'll give you 50% off any paid versions for 3 months, which I think gives you a good amount of time to kind of test it up, get everything set up, and see where it works within your process.
Yeah, thank you.
That's much appreciated. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you take it there. That what I'll do, Ryan, as well, is obviously when I put the webinar out on LinkedIn and on things, I'll make sure that your email address and your web address is in that as well. So if you need anything from there, much appreciated. But again, thank you much for your time. It's been much appreciated. Ladies and gents, I hope you've really looked at that. Yeah, some results coming through already. Annette thought really useful round. Thank you. So, again, next week, we're back again next week. We'll have a whole new set of webinars that we're going to look at next week. So Ryan, thanks. Dave, thanks. Ladies and gents, thanks for your time. And I'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Guys.
Cheers,
bye.
Cheers,